Hello everybody. Here's what I mean about rewriting. Here I have text here, original number one, and what I want you to do is basically to rewrite the sentence into a simplified English. So what I want you to, for example, I'm not going to go through all this because I'm not going to read it all together because it's a very long sentence. So instead of doing that, I'm gonna show an example of uh, what I want to do. All right. So it says here, a world of meaningful religious traditions as the ancient cradle of Judaism, Christianity, with a long heritage of Muslim tradition as well. Israel today officially recognizes all of the monotheistic faiths as a misspelling and welcomes many other spiritual belief systems. All right, it was a one chunk of sentence, but it straddled uh, is total 4, 5, 6 lines. So the thing is, if I copy this, for example, this whole sentence and paste it on Google translation. So finally, what I want to do is to translate the whole document into Japanese. So here I got here. So you're an speaking person, so you might not know how it doesn't make sense. But if we Japanese native speakers read the sentence, it can obviously be seen that the sentence doesn't really make sense because if you consider the difference between the linguistic distance between, take an example of Spanish and English Spanish, vice versa, and if you Google Translate, it functions very well because the languages are very close. They all belong to in Hindu European language. But take an example of the linguistic difference and distance between English and Japanese. They are totally different, so the outcome is not really good. It sounds like very machinery. And in fact, the process is very machinery. So what I want you to do is to simplify this highlighting sentence into simplified English by chopping it into maybe 3 or 4 sentences. So the thing that I'm gonna walk you through today is to how to chop them uh, into several sentences, and some of the things that you gotta be very careful about uh, in 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 chopping the sentence into several parts. So we have the original text here, but basically there's this guy, uh, the first rewriter that I have hired, and I just wanted him uh, to go through the trial and how it turns out. And so we had the blueprint of what it should be, but I have made some corrections of how the sentence would sound like after the simplification. So so we have the simplified English. This is also simplified. Let me read it. Read the first sentence, okay? A world of meaningful religious strategy. This is what I have read previously. But after the simplification, it sounds like this. There is a world of meaningful religious traditions as the ancient cradle of Judaism and Christianity. Period. Okay? It has also been a long heritage of Muslim tradition. Period. And this is Israel today. Period. It's very simple, isn't it? So by doing this, we can make the complicated sentence into a simplified English, which is very compatible to Google Translation. Let me just paste it on the Google Translation how it works. Uh, okay, it recognizes all the monotheistic faiths and welcomes many other spiritual belief systems. So from here to here, it was the whole sentence. So how the outcome changes, you might not know because you're not a Japanese speaker. So outcome is pretty much uh, is something that makes sense. Yeah, it sounds all right. But I just need a little bit more proofreading. But it's all right. It was not as bad as the previous one. So here are some tips by which to improve your rewriting skill to make the sentences into a compatible one to Japanese. Okay, here's the first one. That says, a world of meaningful religious traditions as the ancient cradle of Judaism and Christianity, comma, with a long heritage of Muslim tradition as well. Israel today officially recognizes all of the monotheistic faiths and welcomes many other spiritual beliefs. So this rewriter, has chopped this phrase into probably two parts. I guess it is. Okay, here it goes. There is a world of meaningful religious traditions as the ancient cradle, Judaism and Christianity. This is okay, no problem. What about the second one? It has always been a long heritage of Muslim tradition. Okay, but here we have the pronoun it. Sometimes it can be, in English, it is always something. Okay, but if you say he or she, it is always somebody. But what about an example of using the pronoun they? It can also refer to, either refer to a person or a thing. So the outcome of the Google translation may not make sense. So you better explicitly state what the pronoun refers to. For example, here's my suggested rewriting. Instead of saying it has also been a long heritage of Muslim tradition, why not say the world has always been a long heritage of Muslim tradition, or Israel has always been a long heritage of Muslim tradition. So, so the third sentence that out of which he chopped into was Israel today recognizes all kinds of religions because they believe that there's only one God. Yeah, this is perfect because the word monotheistic here. This is a little bit of the religiously speaking uh, technical word, and most of the Japanese people may not probably understand this word. So this paraphrase is really powerful, and this is very good. Let's move on to the next one. It offers, this is the original text, by the way. It offers a full spectrum from which to choose the most meaningful site for final parting with your loved one. Okay, so the rewriter rewrote like this. It offers variety of belief of which to choose the most meaningful tradition for the departed loved ones. Because I've already told you, instead of using the pronoun it here, you better explicitly state what the pronoun refers to. For example, our service offers variety of choice for the most meaningful tradition for the departed loved ones, depending on which belief we support. Well, this part here did not exist. It did not exist in the original sentence, but you can supplement, add some phrases or some sentences to make it sound better. Sometimes, if you directly translate from one language to another, the process doesn't really make sense. So you need to add something to make it sense to as a whole sentence. Okay, now let's move to the next one. A vast range of faith-based expressions spanning thousands of years of history presented. Okay, this is a past tense. You don't necessarily have to make it into an active voice. This is past, and that's perfectly fine. And so, it has been. Yeah, it's okay. This doesn't have to be chopped into several parts. A diverse, absolute certainty throughout history will present, and this is perfect. Let's move on. So, in the original text, this sentence here, ash burial, ash scattering ceremony is dignified as tribute in Israel. This sentence did not exist in the original context, original text, but the rewriter added this phrase, this sentence, to make it sound, to make it a bridge between the previous sentence and the sentence to come, and this is perfectly okay, and this is great. And now the next one is a little bit longer one. As I'm Japanese, I have difficulty reading this. Some of the things that I don't know. But let me read it. Christianity, Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Armenians, Ethiopians, Copts, Baptists, Lutherans, many other Protestant denominations, Judaism, spiritual, historic, Zionistic, humanist, symbolic sites, Islam, all Sunni traditions, including Buddhism, whatever. I can't read it. And persecuted are whatever movements, offshoots of the monotheistic faiths, Druze, Badai, Messianic Jews, Gnostic, and other, arranging an ash burial, ash gathering ceremony in the land of Israel as a dignified tribute that reflects the ambience of the Holy Land and its timeless values. Well, it was rather a long one, but this is rather long, as it says. I think Google can translate it very well, as the structure is mainly, word to word process, and the process of translating should also be word to word, as we have comma, 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 and all these kind of things. Okay, so if it's all things that conjunct together with a lot of commas, there's nothing you have to worry about. The Google translation can function very well in that case. So you don't have to chop them into several. If you want, you can. If you're really, confident, if you can do this, there's no problem doing that. All right, let's move on. So the original text, the next one is, over thousands of years, Jerusalem has inspired millions of prayers, songs, and pilgrimages only to the three monotheistic faiths. This city shelters churches, mosques, and synagogues representing 3,000 years of history. But that was rather a long one, so the rewriter chopped this sentence into three parts. Over thousands of years, Jerusalem has inspired millions of prayers, songs, and pilgrimages. Well, this is a very simple subject, verb, object order, so this is awesome because the writer was using the active voice rather than the passive. Well, as I said, as I've already told you that which either one is okay, but I would say if you feel more comfortable using an active voice rather than the passive one, I would recommend you to choose an active one. The reason why I'm saying this is in English we don't use a lot of passive sentence, do we? So same with Japanese as well. So if you want to if you want to focus on who is doing what and in what way, maybe it's better for you to use an active voice rather than a passive voice. Okay, let's move on. Number two, this city is holy to the three monotheistic faiths. Well, this is very short, and this is great. What about number three? It shelters churches, mosques, and synagogues and represents 3,000 years of history. Well, structurally speaking, there's no problem. But as I've already told you, it is better to explicitly state what the pronoun refers to. And so the question is, well, okay, so previously we have this city of Jerusalem shelters, we have Jerusalem here, the word Jerusalem here, and this city here. So does that mean is it okay to use the word either Jerusalem, this city, cities, shelters, churches, mosques, and so what about the repetition? It must sound stupid. Okay, Well, as I have mentioned here, no problem with repetitions. Don't be scared of that. So in English, you have to choose some other choices of words to avoid sounding too stupid. But in this case of rewriting, this is nothing you have to worry about. So the more sound stupid and childish it sounds, the better. And what did I write here? Better supplement the subject to the verb represent to make what comes after an, and subject plus verb sounds more stupid that way. Ah, okay. So instead of here, it shelters, churches, mosques, and synagogues and represents here. So this means, okay, this is a verb, represents. But let's take a look at what is the subject of this sentence, structurally speaking. The pronoun it should be the subject to this verb. So this is where the Google translation might have problem. So you want to supplement to add the subject again here. And again here, I'm stressing here this point. No problem with repetition. So, but the subject suggested rewriting is this city shelters churches, mosques, and synagogues, and this city represents 3,000 years of history. Okay, it sounds stupid, but it Google translates better. And finally, I'll proofread the whole Japanese into cool sounding Japanese, so there's no problem with that. Okay, let's move on. Some of the most revered sites in Christianity are the historic old city, and this is this colon, not semicolon, which means Church of the Holy. I don't know how it's pronounced. Via Dolorosa, Station of the Cross, and more millions come from around the world to each. This is misspelled. By the way, if you find any misspelled words, I want you to correct it. And obviously, it was not cash, but it was each. So if you find any misspelling, I would love you to ask you to change it to a sentence, a word that makes sense. So world each year to elevate their souls and participate in the spiritual life of this ancient modern city. So it was a long one. So this rewriter chopped this sentence into one, two, three, four, yeah, four sentences. And this is good enough, okay? Let me explain to you. Some of the most number one, some of the most revered sites in Christianity are in the old city of Jerusalem. Perfect. What about number two? Among them, a church of the Holy Sepulchre, Via Dolorosa, Station of the Cross, and more. And this is perfect. What about number three? Countless numbers of people come from around the world each year. Oh, this is perfect. What about number four? In the city where things are ancient and modern at the same time, the believers uplift the souls and partake in spiritual activity. Okay, there are two tips that I would suggest you to change. I think you better chop it into two sentences because we have the junction here where, and this is where we have the problem translating from Japanese language to English. And in the process of translating from Japanese to English and vice versa, we have the problem to Google translating it because linguistically speaking, we have this is where is a post-positioned modifier. So in Japanese it comes from the front. So you better chop it into two sentences to make it compatible to Japanese as well. It's better to chop it into two sentences. When you see anything that starts with which or where or when or whatever, okay, or that clause is something that you got to be very careful about when you're translating from Japanese to English as well, or English to Japanese as well, because the word order will be upside down and left side right, and that is when you better chop it into plural numbers parts. And this is one tip. Another tip was better supplement the subject to the verb present to make what comes after "and" in subject and verb sounds more stupid that way. As I've told you, this is something aforementioned already, because okay, let's take a look at what we have here. Where things are ancient. This is a verb to be here. Things are ancient and modern at the same time. Okay, and this verb to be is perfectly fine. What about the next one? The believers. Okay, the believers. This is the subject, and uplift. Here comes the object. No, excuse me. Verb, and their souls, and here we have the verb partake here. So this is where Google Translation might have a problem. So we must supply what is the subject. So it should be, if you just trace back at what the subject was, this is talking about believers. The pronoun should be not the pronoun. That the subject should be believers. So the believers uplift their souls and uplift and the believers partake in spiritual activity. What about the repetition? You remember? You don't have to worry about the repetition. So you sound stupid. That's totally fine. Okay, so what I would suggest that this sentence be rewritten is: in this city, things are ancient and modern at the same time. So the believers uplift their souls, and the believers partake in spiritual activities. Let me repeat it all over again. Okay, well, you got to chop it into several sentences when you see something that starts with WH. Another thing is that you got to make clear what the subject is every time a sentence starts. So you have to be very careful what the subject is. You have the subject here and the verb here. So this is a complete sentence. Let's move on. Now we have the original text. Built across a network of hills and valleys framed by forests, mountains, and desert, Jerusalem provides awe-inspiring views in all directions. From the world famous Mount Olive's Garden, Toms, and Mount Zion, etc., etc. So this rewriter was very clever to chop it, to not to wait until the very end of this sentence. He just chopped it into several parts at will. So let's take a look at what he has done and how I have corrected his rewriter. Number one, Jerusalem is built across a network of hills and valleys enclosed with forest, mountain, desert. Well, this is very good. But post modifiers, let's take a look at this. Okay, enclosed with forest. When we look at the structure of this sentence, okay, Jerusalem built across a network of hills, okay, and valleys. So a network and hills and valleys. This is a noun. This is a modified noun. What is modifying this? When we'll take a look at what follows, enclosed with forests, mountains, deserts. So when you're translating from English to Japanese with Google Translation, sometimes you have to be very careful with which one comes out first, the noun or the modifier, and the noun. So in this case, what you gotta do is if you can just chop it into two parts, you can better Google Translate. So what I would suggest you to rewrite it is: Jerusalem is built across a network of hills and valleys, and these hills and valleys are enclosed with forests, mountains, and deserts. So you better chop it into two parts, and you have "and" here. And what you're going to be very careful here is not to worry about the repetition. these hills and valleys. You have hills and valleys. It's perfectly fine for you to repeat it. Okay, so hence it provides an amazing view in all directions, such as the world-famous mounds of Olives, Garden Tombs, and Mount Zion. Okay, as I written it, not bad, but better. Again, you better chop it into two parts because it sounds a little bit longish. So my suggested rewriting with it, hence it provides an amazing view in all directions. Okay, period. For example, we can see the world famous Mount Olives, Garden of Tombs, and Mount Zion. Sounds stupid enough? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, here it says, they are all gathered into the intimate gardens of observation in every corner. So this sentence did not actually exist in the original text, but it was in the context. So this rewriter was very clever enough to add this sentence to the rewriting process, and it is perfect. Let's move on. And after the word Zion here, move back here. Zion here, we had the postposition here to the preposition here to the intimate gardens and whatever. Let me read it aloud for you. To the intimate gardens and observation points tucked into every corner, there are infinite choices for spot from which to symbolically unite your loved one with the enduring character of Jerusalem. Okay, this is something we have the problem with because this sentence is very long. In addition, we have a lot of double H stuff, and we have a lot of complex sentences. So, and this is what we got to be very careful about and make the sentence into a simplified, very simple and stupid English by chopping the sentence into several parts. So let's take a look at what the rewriter have done. Okay, number one, having an infinite choices for a spot where you can symbolically unite with your loved one in an enduring nature of Jerusalem. Well, I can point out two things. Okay, but later on, one thing is the context is not really right because there is a difference between the first context, original context, and the rewritten context. Because the first context, original context, says, "Unite your loved one with the enduring character of Jerusalem." So, what is this person united with? This person is united with the enduring character of Jerusalem. So, it sounds like in this rewritten sentence that the person whose ash is to be scattered in Israel sounds like the person who is united with the person who is doing the ceremony. So this is not the case. So okay, let me correct them one by one. Okay, you have an ing form, and so you have an ing form with that the subject. That means you should be able to you should be able to find a real subject. So having an infinite choices for a spot where you can symbolically unite with your loved one. Well, I think it's structurally wrong, so we have to change the whole stuff. I think the rewriter wanted to write something, but this is not a complete sentence. You have to make it into a complete sentence by adding something or by subtracting something that you don't need. So anyway, you don't. Okay, you need the subject. So avoid if you find any participle structure with ing or ed, and that's when you have to chop it into plural numbers parts, because that will make the sentence a very complicated one, making it incompatible to the Google translation. So you better chop it into two sentences when you say anything that starts with double H here. So you have double H here, where you can symbolically unite with your loved one. So this is probably the process that Google Translation will have the problem. So whenever you see the double H stuff or that close, that is when you better chop it into plural number parts. And what here I stated, you have to be very careful with that context. So I want you to compare the two things. Okay, you can symbolically unite it with your loved one in an enduring nature of Jerusalem. Okay, so who and who are united? This is the person and the character of Jerusalem. It is not a person and with a person. So that's what you got to be very careful about. And so my suggested rewriting will be this: you have an infinite choices for the spot, in the spot. Okay, so in this way, I avoided the WH conjunction. So I said you have an intimate choices for the spot. In the spot, you can symbolically unite your loved one with an enduring character of Jerusalem. So context is all right, structurally all right. Yeah, everything is all right. So it's not really difficult, is it? So I think you can do it. The whole purpose of this rewriting is to make it compatible with the Google translation. And if you have that in mind, you should be able to do a very magnificent job. Okay, I hope you will enjoy this job, and I wish you a good luck. Thank you.